Okay, you guys are on the
Okay, well, good evening all, and welcome to the December 1st, 2020 Remote Growth Planning Committee meeting. We will start off with introductions of members and guests. Dan Saunders, Chair.
Jim Fitzgerald, Vice Chair.
Paul Hogan.
Janet Powell.
Janet Powell. Werner?
Werner Gilliam.
Okay. Anyone else from the committee on?
Yeah, Mike's here.
Is Mike here? Excellent. All right, and okay, anyone out in the audience? Tom?
Tom is here, but he has his audio and video turned off right now. He's a panelist,
Okay.
and there are no attendees right now.
Okay, great. All right, so we did the introduction. I guess we can, while we wait for Tom to come on, we can skip to number 3, which is review our minutes from November 17th. Nice minutes, Janet. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Are there any questions? I only had one. Under the water quality, the second to last sentence said non-point and point source pollution regulations allow only one residential and business wastewater discharge into the Kennebunk River that has previously been treated at the wastewater treatment plant. So we only have one discharge, Werner? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
The sewer department only has one discharge
Okay.
into the Kennebunk River.
But that's the only one that's allowed? Or are there other ones that have been allowed into the Kennebunk? That's the way that sentence is worded. I was thinking it's only one discharge that's allowed into the river.
Yeah. Now, that's a good question. I don't know that, that's the only one that's permissible as a direct discharge. It is the only one, so.
I can certainly rewrite it so that it sounds as though at this time there is one, not that if there is only one or there's only one permitted. If
Okay.
you'd like me to modify that one sentence.
Yeah.
I can rephrase it so that we can identify that there is one, but not make
Yeah.
it sound as though it's the only one allowable or
Right,
permissible.
right. Yeah, okay.
Okay, I'll do
Yeah,
that.
that'd be good.
Yeah,
Thank
we
you.
change that.
All right.
Move to accept the minutes with revision.
Second.
All right.
Thanks,
Any other
Paul.
discussion on them? All in favor? Raise your hand.
Aye.
All right. All right, good. So thank you, Janet.
Sure.
Hey, Dave, is Tom ready to join us?
Tom, you need to unmute.
How's that?
There you go.
Excellent.
There you go.
Perfect.
Good. I'm not sure how I got muted. So you can hear me and see me?
Yes, we can.
Yep.
Shall I start in on marine resources?
Yep. We covered 1 and 3, and we can hop into marine resources.
Okay. We have some slides to show you, but as I recall, I need to have permission to share the screen.
You should have that.
Okay. Share screen. Oh, okay. Give me 1 sec here to figure this one out. It's going to take me about half a minute to figure this out if you guys want to talk about something else.
Okay. Well, the item 4 on our agenda will be the review of the transportation chapter. And we are planning a second meeting in December, so that would be the 3rd Tuesday, which would be the 15th, correct?
That's what I have on the calendar.
Yeah, okay, great, thanks. One thing we have to get on the calendar, on the agenda, is we're supposed to nominate our chair, vice chair, and secretary each year. We haven't done that yet. So we should put that formally on the agenda
Okay.
for the next time. Maybe we can make that the second thing we do after introduction.
Yep.
Okay.
Great news from Liz.
Yes.
Very exciting. Mother and daughter are doing great.
Yeah. It is very great news.
So Tom, can I help you out with anything?
Well, when I click the share screen button,
Or
I'm-
a choice of what you want to share?
well, it sends me to 4 different folders. None of them are the right one. And I thought I could just find it off the desktop. But,
Yeah, there we go. We're seeing your
Desktop. Yeah.
desktop.
You see the lobster?
No, we don't. That's even read.
We're seeing your Explorer. Windows Explorer.
Click on that PPT file.
Yeah.
Now we
Yeah.
just lost your share.
The window is closed. Damn it. Okay. Can you see the lobster now?
No.
Yeah.
Not unless you're the lobster.
No. Okay.
It's got a little bit of blue on.
You're often presented with a choice of sharing a screen or sharing a particular app. I would suggest you tell it to share a screen and then put on the screen what you want to share.
I'm looking at basic, advanced, or files. Those are my 3 choices.
Basic, advanced, or files?
Yeah. It could be I'm operating off an iMac, and that could be part of why we're speaking different languages here.
Okay.
I would stay with the files.
Yeah, I agree. Try that again here. Dismiss record.
You had it. All you had to do is double click on it.
Here, I'm gonna try something. Well, you have to. I think they've made this more complicated than it used to be.
Yeah, I've done this successfully in the past. I'm not sure what's happening right now. Myrna, do you have a copy of the PowerPoint? There was when I sent you guys an email a week ago. There was a link to it.
Yeah, what I can do, I can pull up and just pull up the website.
Well, the website doesn't have the PowerPoint. No. The
Okay,
PowerPoint was actually it wasn't, was it? That was the document. All right.
All right, let me see what I can find here.
Tom, give this a try. Go and open up your PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Ignore Zoom for a moment. Open up the PowerPoint and have it on your screen.
Mm-hmm.
Then switch back to Zoom. You can Alt-Tab on a PC or I can't remember
Yep.
if it's Command-Tab on a Mac. Hit your
Okay.
share button, share screen,
Yeah.
and in basic, you should have as an option that PowerPoint.
I do indeed. How about that? That was good advice.
Select that and share.
All right, I'm going to expand the PowerPoint. It's not All right, that should do the trick.
Yep. And if
Screen
that,
sharing has failed to start, please try again later.
if that doesn't work, I've the chapter 9 PDF that you sent me.
Yeah, that, the PowerPoint is, you know, I have it on the screen. It looks like it should work. And when I click share, I get this error message that says, screen sharing has failed to start. Please try again later.
You've done that more than once?
Yeah,
I'm not sure what to tell you there.
well, let's try that, that routine we just tried though. That almost got us there.
These days are trying to lock things down to prevent Hitler and penises.
Here we go.
There it is.
There we go.
Now, is it still gonna be there if I expand it? Or do you want to stay like
Uh,
this level? Quit while we're ahead?
Just
Go
leave
while
it
we're
like
ahead.
that.
We're good.
Good. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll spread it out a little bit here. I know what I'm seeing. I'm assuming you guys are seeing the same thing. Anyways, anybody recognize a lobster here?
Yes, it was caught in September of this year here in Kennebunkport.
Yes, that was my belief. I've been trying to chase down the photographer, and it's starting to look a little suspicious. I think the Seacoast Online switched lobsters on us. But anyways, there was a blue lobster caught off Kennebunkport when, you know, late September, early October. So, yeah, I can't tell you this definitively right now. We took a picture, but I'll continue to pursue that. And these are the main contents of the chapter. The harbors, the boats in the harbors, beaches, shellfish, shorebirds. Current conditions and trends, speak a little bit to policies and throw some strategies out there. I guess I'd like to just mention that ordinarily when you do a comprehensive plan, one of the first things you do is you engage the public, get a lot of public input, and we all know we had some scheduling problems with that, and the pandemic made it more challenging. So we'll be this is the first cut. We'll be coming back again later, engaging the public in summer, and then this chapter might look a little different. At least give the public an opportunity to make it a little different.
Sure, sure.
So when I throw out policies and strategies, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, knowing full well we have not engaged the public yet, but we'll go back and revisit those. So this is basic inventory for the Kennebunkport River Harbor. It's excellent protection from weather. It's not always dredged as quickly or as deep as people would like, but lately it's in pretty good shape. It's, as you know, there's an interlocal agreement with the town of Kennebunkport to manage the harbor. And there are 13 marinas in total. 7 of them are on the Kennebunkport side of the river. Over 300 slips, 68 moorings. Half of them are given preference to commercial boats, but there's only 27 commercial boats out there, so that's a little less than half. A government wharf is 200 feet of berthing space. Harbor master estimates there are 25 commercial fishing boats at the wharf. Just one of them is rigged to catch groundfish. And then, of course, there are several charter fishing operations, whale watching, and tons of kayaks and paddle boats. Go over to Cape Corpus, it has more of a commercial flavor than the river. The pier is the most prominent feature, 180 feet in length. And that too has been dredged recently. Harbor master there is a different harbor master, Chris Mayo, estimates there's 45 fishing boats, 18 to 20 fishermen operating year round, and 80 to 100 jobs in fishing industry in town. And the 150 moorings at Cape Corpus are split 80-20 in favor of commercial. Now the there's some other less prominent harbors scattered about. The Chapter 208, which guides comprehensive plans in Maine, requires us to look around to see what other opportunities might be out there for harbors and places to use boats. And the last comprehensive plan identified Stage Harbor. It seems to be a nice place to go for a picnic, but that's really its limitation, though, is that it's very far from the closest road, so it doesn't have much commercial potential. A study in 1988 identified several other sites in the outer part of Cape Corpus Harbor and a few places upriver in the Kennebunk River. And outside of the river and outside of Cape Corpus, you have 75 additional moorings scattered about, half of them commercial, half recreational. 4 beaches, 4 main beaches anyways. One of the largest one, of course, is Goose Rocks. Goose Rocks, the water is tested weekly in the summertime. And I wanted to speak to the grass we're looking at in the foreground here too. I think a lot of people take it for granted and assume it's always there, but there are beaches in New England that are in trouble because the grass succumbs to the disease, and if the grass goes, the sand goes, and if the sand goes, those houses along the water are far more exposed to big storms. So that's something to keep an eye on, is the health of the grass, because once it gets diseased, things, as we know, microorganisms travel. Shellfish, we've got 3 different types of habitat. Atlantic surf clams, those are the kind used in clam chowder, blue mussels, and the soft shell clams are typically consumed as steamers. There's very little overlap, actually. I was surprised. There's one place, it doesn't show very well on this map, but that little purple strip in Cape Porpoise, the top of the purple overlaps with the clam, so you could find both species in that area there. But otherwise, they tend to have habitats in different places in town. There's 84 residential permits were issued last year, and non-commercial. Coastal eelgrass, it's important for it's a habitat for marine species that are part of the food chain that lead to a healthy offshore fishing industry. And that's one reason they're important. They also stabilize the sandy bottoms where they're located. But they are susceptible to turbidity and to nutrients. Now, Werner, maybe you can help me out here. I didn't have any trouble finding data for eelgrass. It's offshore, but I was hunting around for some data for the estuaries, and I was unable to find any. I don't know if you've run into any in your travels.
No, I don't have any. I don't have any separate data source for that.
Yeah.
I mean, none other than what you would anticipate. I'd probably go to DMR, see if they had anything, but.
Yeah, I'll look again. They have some for Casco Bay, but I was unsuccessful finding any for Kennebunkport. And it's possible it simply hasn't been mapped. Maybe it doesn't exist. Then the shorebird habitats, you have a few rare species. You got the piping plovers, of course, as everybody is aware, particularly those who reside at Goose Rocks. 17 different species of shorebirds over in the vicinity of Goose Rocks. And in the wintertime, according to Maine Audubon, you have the largest number of species in the state is right along the south coast here. And the Northeast Coastal Marine Recreational Study going up and down the east coast of the United States looking for places that are suitable for scuba diving. And these are the places that they designated in Kennebunkport is mostly Cape Arundel and a place that's offshore. conditions and trends in the draft chapter. I went into quite a bit of length on the history of Gulf of Maine and what happened to the fish over the last 400 years. It's a sad story. But right now it's in kind of poor shape, and there's a lot of stresses on the fish stock. There's the water temperature is warming. There's been some overfishing in the past, and there's been some pollution. So there's a lot of species haven't recovered, but there's a lot of details in the draft itself. One species that is doing well, at least here in the Gulf of Maine, is the bluefin tuna. And there's one commercial fishing boat down at that's dedicated full-time at Cape Corpus, but the harbor master tells me that some of the lobstermen, they go after the tuna during the time off. They're primarily harvesting lobster, but then they'll take a day or two and go out there and chase some tuna. The tuna was doing quite well until the pandemic disrupted the transportation system, and they had trouble getting the tuna to market. The biggest, most lucrative market was Japan, and the flights simply stopped. So that was pretty frustrating for the tuna fishermen. The shrimp 20 years ago were healthy, thriving industry in the Gulf of Maine, but they require cold water, and they've been in trouble since the water temperature started going up. Striped bass is an important species for recreation. You mentioned earlier that there's some charter boats out of the Kennebunkport River Harbor that are bringing tourists out to try to catch the bass. And then because the water temperature is going up in the Gulf of Maine, there's some other species coming up the East Coast that in the past never came this far north because it's too cold for them, but now they're showing up. Just trying to get a handle on what's going on with the lobster industry. They're also being under a lot of stress between the climate change and the ocean acidification, and also, of course, the trade war with China. They took a big hit with that because China was an important export market. So there's nothing too conclusive in this graph other than the fact that the lobstermen can't count on predictability from one year to the next. They've had good years and bad, but right now they're doing okay. But if the temperature continues to increase in the Gulf of Maine, it's likely the lobster are going to move elsewhere to find some cold water.
Hey, Tom,
Yes.
in the narrative, I think it said something that there were lobsters from New Jersey to Canada. Are there really any lobsters left down there? I thought they were long gone from New York and New Jersey.
It'd be hard to find one down there. What we intended with the narrative was that historically the species ranged from New Jersey to Labrador. That's the name of the species is American lobster, and that's the only place where it was really found. But you're right, Paul. Long Island Sound is almost completely wiped out, and it's possible you might find a couple of lobsters down off New Jersey. You're right; it's effectively gone from there.
No, they're more mobsters than lobsters. I'm from New Jersey, so I'm allowed to say that.
And in recent years too, the lobster industry off of Rhode Island and Massachusetts up Cape Cod has been really hit hard. And what are left, scientists speculate they just kind of migrated up to the Gulf of Maine.
Do we have a graph in the plan that shows the increase in temperature in the Gulf of Maine? That sort of supports what what's being said.
Going in there though, because that work has certainly been done by people who know more about it than I do.
That's a good idea.
Tom, one of the other things we had in the current plan, and I don't know if it fits in this particular chapter or if it's something that wants to show up in the economy chapter, but we broke out the local landing data where we had, Cape Porpoise and landing data that came out of the Kennebunk River. So I didn't know if that's something that either wanted to show up here. And honestly, I don't recall if we had that here in marine resources in the current plan, or if we just had that in the economy chapter.
You did have it, Werner. I did notice it. It is in the economy chapter.
Okay, all right.
And I have no problem with putting the local landing data in there. I guess I just kind of made the judgment call that, the industry's fluctuating like crazy. And, when the lobster boats leave Cape Porpoise, they're out in the same water as the lobster boats from York and Wells.
Right.
That's why I think, well, if you just portray York County, that'll give kind of a general picture of how things are.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. For what you're trying to show here, this makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And then the other problem was just the way the state counts the landings. If they bring it to a dealer who's not in Kennebunkport, it's going to show up in some other place.
Right.
So that's going to be a little misleading there too.
Yeah, I remember the challenge of kind of parsing that out, and so, even the local data, there was, you kind of had to make some judgment calls, in terms of, assuming, majority percentages of what was being reported, where that was coming from, and recognizing that, there was some that we were losing, to other landing areas.
Yeah. So, I'll do whatever you guys like. If you want to, I could put in the Kennebunkport landing data in this chapter, side by side. I don't think you're going to see a lot different than what you see in this chart here.
Well, I think it probably makes sense to keep it in the economy chapter, but, and again, just for what we're talking about here for trends,
Yeah.
I mean, we're not going to see anything different with the local data,
Yeah.
But,
So, do you guys, would you like to see the lobster addressed in both chapters, or do you want to consolidate?
One's fine with me.
Yeah.
I agree.
So
Yeah,
we're
I think
not,
we leave it in the economy chapter because that we need to deal with, how going forward, how are we going to support that industry?
so,
What can we do to support that industry?
okay, so you guys prefer we move the lobster to the economy?
well, I mean, I think it's worth mentioning here in marine resources.
Yeah.
I mean, I would tend to think that you want to have it mentioned in both. I mean, it really crosses both chapters.
All right, well, why don't I follow the pattern you did in 2012? We'll put York County here, but we'll put the local landing data in the economy.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Hey, Werner,
Yep.
do the lobstermen who do not sell to a third party, who sell direct, are those landings captured or they're not captured in town?
I mean, that's captured in town. I think where you're not where you're potentially not capturing it is, say, for instance, if a lobsterman decided he was going to, take his landing to Saco, or to Wells, for example, then you wouldn't capture that data there. But, we're capturing data for anything that gets offloaded, at Cape Porpoise, or in the Kennebunk River. I want to say one of the other landings that shows up are one of the distributors in Arundel. And I had gotten a sense a number of years back just from Alan Daggett about, roughly what percentage of the landings are coming into town. And if memory serves, I think we adjusted the numbers to account for, the trend of it, so, to say 90% of, what was recorded was what we thought was representative of the industry, then we bumped it by 10 just to account for the 10 that was lost going to another landing.
Or vice versa.
Right.
We have a great business out toward Goose Rocks. He's a direct seller, but his boat's in Biddeford. But he sells all his lobsters, he prefer to sell them direct in Kennebunkport.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can't speak to those that don't get accounted at the pier. So,
Yeah, yeah.
He'd be in New York County counts, I assume.
Well, maybe.
maybe.
I'm having a little problem with this particular chart, only because it really emphasizes lobster. But we do mention the fin fish and the consolidation. Is there anything that we could depict fin fish? I know it's probably not very much, but maybe show the effect of, over time, what's happened to fin fish as well?
Yeah, we could certainly graph that because that's pretty dramatic. In terms of what's being caught out there now, I talked to both harbor masters and they tell me there's only one boat that's going for the finfish other than the tuna. So I mean, I could try to track that fisherman down and ask him what's going on.
Well, you take in 10 tuna, and that's a lot of pounds.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I wasn't able to find any reliable data on tuna though. I mean, these guys are required to report their lobster landings, but I'm not sure what the deal is with tuna. Does anybody know?
It's a good question. No.
No.
It's just that you're mentioning conditions and trends, but I only see one condition and one trend.
Okay, yeah. The draft of the chapter, I tried to put 3 different ideas on this slide here, but the chapter is broken up clearer, so you can look on top of
The
it.
PowerPoint's not so clear.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that chart's under the lobster heading, so.
Yeah.
That graph.
But it also takes you to the economics and what in the future, given what might happen to lobster, what the town should be thinking about in terms of other parts of the industry that, like shellfish, mussels, oysters, etc.
Paul, that's an excellent question. Could we pause here and maybe try to answer it? Anybody have some thoughts?
Well, you have it in the strategy and the CSA model for fish.
Yeah, that's one strategy.
Um,
I'm open to other ideas, so if anybody has some, just shout them out.
Well, it would seem that whatever regulatory process, I know a mussel guy went into business a while ago. I don't know what happened to him, but, it would seem that we need to do whatever we can do regulatorily wise to encourage those, marine industries that may be capable of being there in the future if lobsters should, as this water warms, whether it's 5 years or 20 years, what are we thinking about to support other industries?
Yeah. Well, it's hard to predict right now, but one thing that might come to the rescue is some of these species from further south might become appealing and they find it too uncomfortable to stay down there,
Mm-hmm.
We'll be eating different fish.
Right.
That's being optimistic, perhaps. The acidification is going to be a challenge as well. So the 2 policies that came through loud and clear in the last 2 editions of your comp plan is protect the working waterfront and maintain the critical edge buffer. Expect that after we get some public input, we'll have some more policies to add to this list. But while we're on the slide here, anybody else have some thoughts on what other policies that you think are pretty important in terms of marine resources?
I had a comment sent to me today, and I see she didn't join, so I'll read what she sent to me. This is a neighbor who's lives at the other end of the beach, who's Mary Ellen LeMay is her name. She's Yale-trained, PhD. I think she's moving here full-time next year. I don't exactly know what her PhD is, but it's something related to, she does a lot of work with pollinators in Connecticut. And anyway, so she, on the critical edge is what she commented on. So I'll just take a minute. I'll read this if it's okay with everybody. It talks about an overlay zone already established should be a foundation on which to place protections for marine and endangered bird species that are facing threats from more contemporary inputs like the increase in the use of synthetic pesticides, herbicides, tick and mosquito controls applied in the zone. Without sources of food from local ecotype plants and the protection of insects that are the source of food for all life, our bird populations will continue to crash along with it, so will everything else. Climate change is only one threat to biodiversity. Designating sensitive overlay zones without making policy and practice changes within them is a useless exercise and greenwashing. The ecosystems are degrading because action steps meant to be implemented in these zones are not taken seriously. When I see landscapers blowing yard debris into the Rachel Carson Preserve on Kings Highway, or watch the tick companies spray perimeter pesticides onto the marsh edge on Cottage Avenue, it tells me there are protections in place. There are not protections in place in that zone. Don't say they are not enforceable. If these landscape and pesticide companies want to continue to do business in town, they most definitely will change their practices to organics and emission-free equipment. GRB, Goose Rocks Beach Zone, is an overlay of multiple overlay zones: shellfish protection, endangered species protection, migratory bird protection, layer upon layer, yet little enforcement. Yet there, I can tear up 2,000 square feet of native back dune vegetation and replace it with a chemical-laden lawn and asphalt with seemingly no regulation. Every single new house restoration from Dyke Road to Batson River has replaced permeable driveways with asphalt and cut down native trees and put in lawn. Do we live in Worcester or Goose Rocks Beach? Where are the impervious footprint restrictions that used to be in place for property changes? Upgrading special guidelines developed for the sensitive watershed overlay or instituting new popular initiatives like lawns for lobsters or pollinator pathways will be a way to encourage sustainable, simple, community-based action steps like planting natives, rethinking lawns, avoiding pesticides that have multiple positive environmental, social, and economic impacts. The nitrogen strategy section, oh, this is later. The rest of this relates to another section, the nitrogen.
Okay.
So this is all related to the critical edge.
Okay, is she responding to the existing regs or to our draft chapter?
She was, I think she was responding to the draft and what she thinks the regulations are or how they're enforced.
All right, well, I'm hearing two different issues here. One is, I think she's saying that the regulations are not comprehensive enough. And the other thing I'm hearing is she's not happy with enforcement. In terms of policy, I think the committee can certainly address, whether or not the regs are comprehensive. Enforcement's really kind of different part of town government that doesn't have much to do with our mission here tonight. But so I'd be interested to hear what thoughts on the regulations. So they are they go far enough to address some of the issues this resident is citing: the chemicals, the pesticides, the impermeable surfaces, which he sees as too much lawn.
And nitrogen, I think she's referring to.
Mhm.
Yeah, to keep the grass green. Yeah. Anybody have any comments on that?
Well, we haven't really addressed that within this chapter, the discussion of, water, stormwater runoff into the coastal areas. But we did discuss that in the water resource area, didn't we?
Yeah, she's talking, I think, just because,
So-
because we're talking about the critical edge, because we're at the
Yeah.
ocean.
Yeah. So, for example, if
It's,
you guys believe that, lawn fertilizers are an issue, we could certainly, make mention of it here in the plan as a policy that, that directing that the regulation should do this or that in terms of addressing that issue.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's a good topic for the public portion of it. The first comment from someone other than the committee on this topic.
yeah.
Okay.
But certainly 20 years ago, before we became very suburban out here at Goose Rocks, no one put anything on their lawns. And now it's changed dramatically as property values have gone up and people have put in, replaced old camps and cottages with big structures and, big lawns, and that requires, the maintenance that people do and the lawn companies do has changed dramatically.
They're busy recreating the environments they fled from.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So it seems.
That's what they know.
But we discussed a lot of that within the water resource chapter. How do we tie these two together then? The concern of, that runoff into streams and so forth, and then the impact on the critical edge.
I think it would have to be in the strategy.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah. Ultimately, it will be addressed by the land use ordinance.
Sure, right.
But, for the land use ordinance to stand on firm ground, you need a little backup in the plan.
Right.
When I say backup, I mean, the policy spelled out that says, look, nutrients are an issue, and this is why, they should be regulated to a certain degree. And then the regulations will get down to the details of what you can and you can't do, and when you can do it, when you can't do it.
Yeah.
Your job here is in your comprehensive plan is to simply lay out these broad policies saying, okay, we recognize this is a problem, and we think the regulation should curtail, so as to protect the resource.
And I think, go ahead, sorry.
No. So one thing just to point out, so critical edge, as an overlay, hasn't been in the town's ordinance since, I'm going to say 2010, I think around the era when, when there were a number of shoreland zoning rewrites and, the critical edge as an overlay zone was removed. There were some of the performance standards remained in place, but that was removed again, like I said, sometime in, I want to say 2010 era.
Well, Werner, you solved a mystery for me. I went looking in the land use ordinance for critical edge, and I did a word search, and nothing came up.
No.
Yep.
So that explains why nothing came up.
Yep.
Obviously, this is carried forward from the 2012 plan, and I just took a guess that you guys are still basically supportive of the concept, but we got to change the wording, seeing how you pointed out that those words are no longer.
That's right. Yeah, that was, like I said, that got pulled out. Yeah, I think it was around 2000. Yeah, around 2010-ish. When there was a significant shoreland zoning rewrite. I think that was around the 2010 era, whenever the state updated the state shoreland zoning guidelines and towns all had to go through a process, and
Okay.
the town had we had a separate ad hoc committee that worked on, the rewrite of that at the time.
Okay, well, we'll come up with some different wording for that policy.
Okay.
But basically, we, in the same general direction as protecting the resources along the estuary there. Let's see, guys ready to move on to the next one? Sure.
Mhm.
Sure.
Marsh migrations. Has there been any discussion of this at all in town?
Not that I'm aware of.
There's a lot out.
Not specifically. I think a lot, a lot of folks are aware of it. I think those folks that live, adjacent to marsh areas, I think are aware of it. But as a community discussion, no, that hasn't really been a topic.
Okay, well, I think it's a good issue to include in the comprehensive plan. The salt marshes we've kind of taken for granted for a long time because the sea has stayed in the same level, but now the scientists are telling us the sea is going to be rising. And those scientists who are studying the marshes themselves have noticed something interesting. They say that over time, marshes can very slowly adapt. They can elevate themselves over time, but not very quickly. That's the question mark that's out there in the scientific community, is when the sea rises, will the marshes be able to move fast enough to stay above water? Because of course, if they can't, then they die. Now, as a community, the challenge is to not get in the way of this marsh migration, and some of the things that stand in the way are houses and roadways and culverts that aren't big enough to let enough water through. And then of course, you've got to identify suitable areas, low-lying areas that would be feasible for the marsh to migrate to. So it's all theoretical at this point. What we know is the marshes can rise. We don't know how fast they can rise. But we do know that if there's obstacles in their way, they're going to fail to rise, and we'll lose the salt marshes and all the value they have. They're phenomenal for storing carbon, and they have a lot of importance in terms of nurseries for a lot of the ocean life that support the commercial fisheries. The Nature Conservancy's kind of really on this topic right now. They're working in several different places in New England, trying to actually make this happen, like, getting culverts out of the way and identifying land that is suitable for migration, and then of course trying to secure the property rights so somebody doesn't build a house on it. So I anticipate it's a topic that the folks in the town are going to be discussing more in the future, but with that assumption, I think it's certainly, we can introduce the topic here in the comprehensive plan, which is my intent here.
Okay.
I think out at the beach at Goose Rocks, I think there's a general belief that the marshes are becoming smaller and smaller, whether they are migrating or not. I don't think anybody's considered, but they seem to be eroding and becoming diminished at both ends, at both rivers. So I do think it's worth including, and, what should we do? Is there nothing we can do? Should we be doing something? I don't know, but I think it's, and, should we be measuring? We profile the beach due to a state program to see what's happening to the beach very regularly with a group of volunteers. Werner, do you know who measures the marsh off of Dyke Road? Because I've seen them measuring, but I don't know who they are. They're like Fish and Game, but I've never seen that data locally.
Yeah, no, that's a good question, Paul. I'm not, I don't know who it is that would be doing that. I mean, it makes sense that, that it may be DMR. that's doing that, but it's not uncommon for, for a state, the state resource to come out and measure a resource, but not necessarily share the data locally.
Well, it's done with some regularity, not at the east end at all, but always at the, from the center of the beach westward.
Yep. And these are different. These are different folks than the ones that are doing the beach profiling.
Oh, right, absolutely. The beach profiling, I know those people. There are a bunch of people who live at Goose Rocks and other beaches, and they do it, once a month for 30 years now. The beach committee had the guy who runs that program speak at a beach committee meeting maybe about 5 years ago to explain what was happening with our beach. I knew volunteers who had worked for 30 years and never got to meet this guy.
Sure.
But he has not. It's just like the water testing, Werner. It's just the beach. It doesn't go beyond, the beach resource.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I remember that meeting that we had. That was Steve Dixon who came.
Oh, thank you. I forgot his name.
Yep. Yeah, it was Steve Dixon who came. He's one of the state, one of the state geologists. We don't have too many of them, but he works. He works for the state and is kind of the dune. He's the dune guru, of the state. We had him come out. Whenever we had a couple of significant storms down at Goose Rocks. That was, I want to say 2018.
Yeah.
Whenever we had, those storms that came in and just sucked all the sand out, really kind of, really did a number, on some of the dunes just to get his assessment as far as, where the sand went and, what actions, if any, the town should consider. So, and at the time, the answer was, well, the sand didn't go far. It's right out in the basin, and give it time and it would come back. And I think that's exactly what we saw. It took a few years, but, it seems like that was the case.
Yeah, he did say, because I think I asked him the question about sea level rise and the dunes and what should we be doing? And he said, we had just had a terrible winter, and we had huge amounts of sand wash off the beach onto Kings Highway at 4 locations, maybe?
Yeah, a couple of spots for sure.
Yeah. And he said, really, the only thing you could do, this is not for this section, but it's probably worth mentioning someplace. He said you should consider doing flyovers. You should restore your dunes to get rid of the walkways so that, because I had asked him whether what I'd seen happen in New York where they built these zigzag walkways after Sandy, so that instead of having a straight path back to the street,
right,
they did zigzags.
Yep.
And we actually tried that in a restoration following that winter. And I asked him about that. Was that, sensible, not sensible? And he said, really, the only thing that will buy you more time than anything else is to fill in those walkways and do flyovers. So you do steps off of the road to a elevated path.
Mm-hmm.
And then the water will be stopped at the, to the extent it can be.
Mhm.
What about public access to the beach, Paul? That kind of.
No, you'd have your same, you'd have your same access points. You would you would elevate your walkway over the dune. You would
Or the bridge.
You would
Like a
let,
little
you
boardwalk.
would
or
build a
something, yeah.
bridge. You would let the dune be contiguous to, through that whole stretch
Mhm.
where it was most vulnerable, particularly. There are many spots where it has never even come close to hitting the highway, hitting Kings Highway. But
All right. Well,
one, at the east end, a couple places at the west end, a couple places where, which don't have the big breadth of sand dunes. He said that's what, he would suggest you try.
All right, well, that sounds like a good recommendation for the plan. We'll wait till we have the public weigh in and then take it up again.
But that has nothing to do with marsh migration, sorry.
No, that was good.
Related.
No, that's good. I didn't have this conversation with that guy, and that's good to know.
What he also said, which was very interesting, we have noticed at the east end, the river seems to be filling. And what what boats used to be able to navigate easily with motorboats is no longer navigable. And he said the sand that leaves the beach and goes in those rivers will never ever come out, which is why you have to dredge rivers. So he said if you get a storm and it washes, he said most of Goose Rock's, the sand washes from end to end and it stays on the beach. But that leaves and goes up the rivers will never return.
Guys ready to move on to the next topic?
Sure.
Mhm.
Actually, several topics. And these are just some strategies that we threw out there to get folks thinking, what can be done about, the decline in the fisheries. And also, community supported fisheries, we spent some time discussing that in the chapter. And my understanding is there aren't any in the immediate vicinity of Kennebunkport, so I'm not sure how familiar you all are with them. There's one here in Portsmouth, and there's another up in Portland. And I know I've been a member for 7 years, and the way it works is we skip the retail store. The fishermen have a guaranteed. Well, let me back up. The community supported fishery lines up orders for fish in advance, so the fishermen have a guarantee of how much fish they're able to sell and a guaranteed price, and the consumer has a promise of very fresh fish. They don't always get species you might have in mind for next Friday, but you are going to get whatever is fresh out of the Gulf of Maine. So that's the basics of that. It's nonprofit. During the pandemic, there was a lot of disruption in transportation, and so a lot of the commercial fishermen had difficulty getting fish to market, and a lot of consumers were hesitant to go into supermarkets. And I know the CSF here in Portsmouth doubled its sales, doubled its volume during that situation. Something to consider. Whether you want to support the establishment of one in Kennebunkport, if you want to persuade the one in Portland or Portsmouth to branch out and include Kennebunkport in their territory.
The Gulf of Maine sashimi, which is the one in Portland, we bought from them since COVID started, and they have tried deliveries down here. In fact, I think they're starting again. So they're trying to cover this area, should there be demand, I guess.
Right. And that's the key is spreading awareness in the community and say, hey, you guys are interested, this is a pretty good deal. And once you hit that critical threshold, they will respond. The other thing that they are always looking for is fishermen too, who are interested in participating. So even if you can't get the fish distributed Kennebunkport, they could generate some commercial fisheries down here to participate.
Mhm.
So that's one strategy to talk about. The other one I raised briefly at the last meeting, aquatic areas, whether or not you want to remove any dams or culverts that might be too small for the fish to get upstream. And we had a few minutes ago good discussion on nutrients. And then offshore wind, that's got a lot of the fishermen kind of apprehensive. They're a little nervous because many of them see the wind generators as another potential obstacle, just one more thing they have to deal with in order to be successful. So they're not too keen about sharing their fishing grounds with a new industry. And then, of course, another strategy is to what Kennebunkport Conservation Trust has been doing so well for these last 50 years, and that's buying up land and protecting it from development. And then every time you redo your comprehensive plan, it's not a bad idea to review your land use regulations to make sure they're in sync, and that one matches the other. And of course, the other one is public education. There are a lot of species out there in the Gulf of Maine that just aren't popular with consumers, but a lot of it has to do with consumers just are unfamiliar with these fish, and that's the reason that there's no demand for them on the retail level. If there's no demand at retail, then the retailers aren't going to buy it from the fishermen. So that's also a challenge of education, of marketing too. Anybody else have any other strategies you'd like to throw in for consideration?
No, I mean, one of the things I think we have to be careful about as well when we develop these strategies on independent chapters is how they conflict with strategies on other chapters.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, like protected lands is great for this piece, but it hurts you when you're trying to do the affordable housing piece, because there's just less land now that becomes more expensive. And so therefore, how do you do both to protect, but also provide options for affordable housing?
Well, that's a good point.
Right.
That's a balancing act.
Yeah.
You guys are, at the end of the day, are charged with coming up with a balance.
For the balance, yeah. So we just gotta, that was one of the concerns I had with the old plan, is that I don't know if we did a good job in balancing those strategies. Because you're sort of focused on this one. Okay, now we move to the next one. Okay, how do the strategies we set up in this one impact what we're trying to do over here? And that's the piece that is real important, that we, at the end of the day, they have to all mesh.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Some land is more suitable for development than others. So we don't.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
protect the land that isn't.
Yeah.
So buying up the land, it's not buying up land and, protecting it, it's buying up the right land.
Yeah.
Right.
And in this chapter, obviously, what I had in mind was the resources along the coast, marine resources.
Yeah. And we do have protective measures in place. What's it, within 250 feet of various salt marshes and freshwater inlands and so forth that are protected, have limited development on. Right. So the resource protection zone.
Yeah, so that's your shoreland zone. You're
Yeah.
250 feet, coming off of, your coastal, you're primarily, in the port here, it's primarily your coastal wetland areas, that you have, large areas of shoreland zone.
Mm-hmm.
But you've also got a fair amount of shoreland zone inland,
Yeah.
along, certain river segments as well, that extends up into.
Right.
And what are the restrictions? I think this goes to Mary Ellen's point. The restrictions in the shoreland zone prohibit you from cutting trees of a certain kind, from what else?
Well, not necessarily. So the shoreline zone standards don't prohibit you from cutting trees. But what's tricky with shoreline zoning is that it assumes that you're dealing with a forest.
Right.
And so what is sometimes tricky to deal with are developed lots. And trying to apply essentially what's almost a timber harvesting standard to developed lots. But as a general rule, within the first 75 feet, there's a stricter limit in terms of tree removal, unless you're dealing with, invasives, if you're dealing with invasive species, or something of that nature, or what we've definitely seen, an uptick in has been, dead, dying, and diseased trees as well. I think we've seen a lot of the pines, have really, and I don't, know how much of that is just with, groundwater levels changing, but, we've seen a fair amount of those, of those pines that are just starting to die off.
Mhm. They're so
but-
shallow rooted too. They go down all the time in the storms.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, so I wouldn't say that there's prohibitions on cutting, but there are regulatory standards that deal with, what you can remove and then what you have to replace it with.
Mhm.
As a general rule, we've seen a fair amount of invasives that get removed. And then, whenever we look at projects where there's invasive removal, we have, we request, a planting plan that tells us what types of species are coming back in. We're looking for native,
Mhm.
we're looking for native species to be replanted, back in. Mike, I know you can speak to this, having dealt with a fair, number of those types of projects that, there's a pretty extensive list to go through, and, there's a fair amount of, regulatory layers that you have to contend with when dealing with, landscape projects in the shoreland zone.
I think the other thing to point out is that there's the DEP regulations, and then there's also towns adopt their own set of codes that are enforced locally.
Yeah, depending on the project, you may have a, you may have a DEP permit by rule that a project has to go through. It can be challenging at times because, multiple, even within the same agency, for example, the language is different. You may have one branch of DEP that's going to enforce a permit by rule, and you'll have another branch of DEP that that may enforce NRPA permits, and they use different language and different standards. Shoreland zoning has another different set of standards, and so we try to work those all together, to try to bring consistency to them. But it can be a regulatory challenge whenever you have multiple layers.
Well, guys ready to talk about the chapter 208? Sure.
Sure.
Okay, I'm assuming you're all familiar with it. The state of Maine says you've got to include certain components in your plan in order to get it certified. So that's one of our challenges. Liz and I are, gonna give you assurance we will hit all the check boxes. Of course, the other challenge is to come up with the same document that's can garner support at town meeting as well. And the other one, and I think this is most important, is to come up with a plan that is current, that addresses the realities of, what we faced in the year 2020. And that just weren't even present 10 years ago. That's chapter 208 is I think they did a good job at what they were trying to do 10 years ago, but they're kind of falling behind the times too. So we'll check off all the check boxes in 208, but we also want to address the impacts of climate change, which are many. This is the state's goal for marine resources, to protect the ports and harbors from incompatible development, to promote access to the shore for commercial fisheries and the public. Have you, if I can pause for a second, how many of you were involved in the 2012 comprehensive plan? Or are you guys all new to this? So,
I'm new.
I was involved.
okay. So these are the policies that the state requires the plan to address, and this, we're not going to change those. We can't. I'm just putting them up on the screen so you can get a sense of what the state will be looking for in the plan. And then in a moment, we'll get into some of the areas of the town can go this way or that way. And that's where you guys will be making some decisions. You can see these policies are all pretty much types of things that pretty much, majority of people can get behind. Then the state requires us to analyze certain issues that are related to marine resources. The first one, number one, is the coastal water quality being monitored on a regular basis. And Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that that's overseen by the state, but there's a lot of volunteers, and they are taking water samples about once a week in the summer.
Also at what's the name of the other beach?
Colony?
Colony, thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
It's
And
part
it-
of the Maine Healthy Beaches
Healthy beaches.
program.
Maine Healthy Beaches program.
Is there a regional, a local plan in place to identify and eliminate pollution sources? I have a call into regional planning. I didn't run across any in my travels. I was going to ask them if they knew of any. Werner, how about you? Are you aware of any regional plan?
No, I'm not aware of a regional plan that's specific to this, this particular goal. I mean, I think that's something that, because each town is going to, kind of chart their own path, in terms of their, whatever their specific pollution, issues or sources are. So I would say that's going to be left up to a local town. There's not really, regional planning doesn't really have any, doesn't really have any regulatory teeth, per se, except whenever towns, make the choice to adopt, plans that are put out there. But I'm not aware of one that's specific to this.
Okay.
But I think the question that Tom asked is there a local or a regional plan? You have to check off one box or the other, and I would say we can't check off regional, and I would say we really can't check off local. We do the testing, but I don't think we have a local plan in place to identify and eliminate, and I think that's a problem.
Okay. Well,
We've had bad test results since 2004, 5, or 6, and we really have had very limited activity to try to identify and eliminate pollution sources. In the past year or two, we've had some renewed energy on that. Werner's been involved, but we really don't have, 16 years later, we still have the same problems.
Okay, so there's no plan. I did have a good conversation with Megan Sims from the Maine Healthy Beaches. And she told me that they've been doing a lot of work at Goose Rocks since 2018. They've compiled a lot of data. They're out there looking for sources for coliform and E. coli, and they're getting ready to issue a report. They said as soon as January we might see a report. So this is one that will, it won't be a plan, but at least it'll be a big data dump. We'll have a lot of interesting information we haven't seen before, and we'll circle back early next year and see what they produce.
If you get it by January, I'll fall off my seat and buy everybody a beer. If you get it by next June, that would be more in line with what's happened in the past.
Megan tells me there's a draft that exists and it's being reviewed by all the people.
God love her.
Things.
All right. Hey, Janet, can you make sure you get that in the minutes?
Yep, I got it.
All right, thanks.
Here's all
Yeah, so
around.
when COVID ends, you can take me up on this offer.
All right, now I'm looking forward to it, but until then, she wasn't able to share very much because it's all draft.
I mean, we did have some policies and strategies around that specific goal. I mean, there was a town goal to protect the water quality of all rivers, streams, and coastal beaches,
Yes, yeah.
right? So we had different policies and strategies. Now, whether or not those have been implemented is a good question. I have to look back at that details.
Yeah, and the other question you're going to have to ask is, okay, it made sense in 2012. Is that still on target? You know, is it still a policy strategy we agree with in 2020? I punted on that one. I decided that's really one that's best to wait till we get some input from the public.
Yeah, yeah.
And we'll come back and talk about specific strategies and policies.
I mean, unfortunately, we made the USA Today's top 10 most polluted beaches in America in summer of 2019. Now,
Well,
that was partially a result of testing every week
Mm-hmm.
in 3 locations, and because that's a credit to Maine that they do that. But it's also the same test results we had in 2006 and 7. And we do not have a plan. Werner, you may disagree with me. I respect you if you do have a different opinion, but as someone who's been testing on the ground for years and has been on the beach committee, I don't see a plan.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to get into a debate on whether there's a plan or not, but would it be good to have some policy statements in terms of what it is that that the town is trying to pursue with the water quality testing? Yeah, I mean, I think that would be a helpful framework to have, would be a helpful document to have. I think what we've seen, what's been challenging with seeing this data is sometimes it's tricky to chase. It's tricky to chase. It's tricky to follow up on. I mean, this year was the first year that I think, well, no, I take that back. Last year, I think, was the first year that we did the DNA testing, which yielded some interesting results, but mixed results as well. And I think there's, and I'm looking forward to just hearing as well what the Healthy Beaches report comes out with, because with kind of a lot of broad data, what do you do with the broad data that doesn't have any conclusive, that doesn't have any really direct conclusive results other than saying, yep, we get elevated bacteria counts here. I think having clear data that helps point you to specific issues will help with the development of strategy.
And they may make some progress in that regard, Werner.
Yeah.
We'll know when we read it. But the DNA is interesting. It's going to give you a sense of, whether it's coming from birds and dogs or humans,
I think it's going to show it comes from all,
Right.
and that's the problem.
Hopefully,
Right.
hopefully it'll go that be a little more location specific, saying, okay, over here it's coming from humans, and that means somebody's leaking,
Yeah,
Now,
possibly.
yeah, we're which leads us into I guess the shellfish data we got kind of is a good segue into that topic we were just discussing. This is the data I got from the state on which shellfish beds are open, which ones are closed. And over on the right, I don't know how well you can see it on the screen, those little circles are where they've actually dug up some clams and tested them and determined whether they were safe to eat or not. And they're color coded, so you can, you can read the legend on the right. You can see where you see the red circles and the black ones. You don't want to eat any clams from over there, but the green ones are okay, and the yellow ones are pretty safe as well. But what's kind of neat about this map is it shows you that there's a lot of variability along the coast. There's definitely some places where it's safe to eat the shellfish, and most of the town's coastline you wouldn't want to do that. Are you guys able to see this map okay from where you are?
Yeah. Werner, is this the same map we give with the licenses?
I haven't seen that map, Paul. This is data I got from the state.
So there's a map when you buy your license on January 1st or whenever that is.
So
You
there
get a
are
map.
areas that are identified that have been approved by DMR for shell fishing.
Yes. And there's extensive areas where it's not a good idea. Traditional water-dependent uses thriving or in decline. What would the waterfront look like in 10 years? So my take as an outsider is recreational boating is thriving. There's a lot of interest in that. There's a lot of boats. And the fishing industry is, on the other hand, is under a lot of stress due to several factors. Anybody else want to weigh in on this question?
Yeah.
No, I think that describes it pretty well.
Okay. Is there a reasonable balance between the commercial and the recreational uses? And again, my observation is the town has worked very hard for many years to maintain that balance and protect the traditional fishing industry.
Yeah.
The policies have been in place, and the town provides financial support for government work.
Right.
And
Yeah.
for Cape Porpoise. Back to this was earlier in the discussion. I forgot to mention it. Werner, aren't we dredging? Isn't the government dredging again this summer? Isn't that a new? Tom's narrative kind of does not mention that. I guess we're in need of dredging again, and it's going to happen again. And I read Colony Beach may be closed all summer. So,
Yeah. So what you have, so Cape Porpoise Harbor was just recently dredged. And the reason why Colony Beach is going to be closed, next summer, is because the Army Corps is doing repair work at the mouth of the river. So they're going to be doing repair work on the jetties, and so that's why Colony is going to be closed, to the public.
So it's not dredging at all.
I mean, there may be some minor dredge work that they have to do as part of that project, But the primary purpose of that project is to do repair work to the jetties on both sides, on the Kennebunk and the Kennebunkport side.
They did do some dredging a year or two ago, didn't they? Weren't it down that? neck
They
of-
did. Yep. Yeah. The mouth of the mouth of the Kennebunk River had to get dredged after Hurricane Sandy. It was pretty well, it was pretty well closed up. There was some navigation issues there after Sandy, but that was something that the Army Corps came in and took care of that dredge.
Okay. How does local zoning treat land around working harbors? Well, my analysis of the zoning ordinance is the ordinance goes out of its way to protect the fishing industry. And one way I measured that is just the types of uses that are permitted in multiple zones in town.
Who was part of the nature people,
Mhm.
said, we shouldn't even try.
Would agree with that. I would agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Question number 7, is there a local regional harbor or bay management plan? If not, is one needed? I'm aware of the river committee and how it's an intermunicipal enterprise between 2 different towns. I've not run across a harbor plan. Did I miss anything, Werner, or does one not exist?
So, no, I'm not familiar that we have, we have the river, the Kennebunk River is governed, by both towns. And so there's an we have an interlocal agreement, for the operation, of the Kennebunk River. As far as, Cape Porpoise Harbor, we don't have a separate plan per se. There's been some discussion regarding, just, the kind of the practical issue around mooring placements, in terms of setting up maybe a better defined grid system for mooring placements. But yeah, generally speaking, there's not a separate management plan, other than what I've just mentioned.
It sounds like there's not much of a demand for one either, huh?
Yeah, I think, if you were dealing with if you had a larger, or like what's mentioned here, more regional harbor, that would make sense. I don't know that there's really a demand for a management plan, of Cape Porpoise Harbor outside of what the town's policies are, but I think that'd be a conversation for, if you wanted to rein Chris Mayo in on that one, but.
Yeah. I would say that the town policies that we have in place is the plan. It's just not listed as one, right? There's
Yeah,
there's a way we manage the river with the combination between the 2 towns. There's the way we
Right.
have priority to how we handle the commercial fishermen. And that's all part of the,
And that's a good answer to number 7.
Yeah.
We have policies in place, so we don't really need a plan.
exactly.
Remember this dude, Christo?
Yeah, I remember Christo. Yeah, he put stuff
Are
around.
there any local dredging needs?
I thought it was a jackass,
Um,
killing wildlife, but anyway, I think it's something like that.
Yeah.
My read of the town reports is that most of what needed to be done has been done recently.
Yeah. No, I'd agree with that. It does seem probably, at least every other year, out in the Kennebunk River, there's a significant number of private dredges that happen at the local marinas. But those are more along the line of just maintenance dredges that happen, along those commercial waterfront areas.
Okay. Question number 9, the state wants to know if we have adequate access, particularly in regards to parking. My response is the commercial fishermen have sufficient parking. For the general public, it gets kind of tight. And then the state wants to know, what can you do to fix it? And my answer is, well, the geography is such that that's would be very difficult.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's probably a fair assessment.
Number 10, state wants to know about protecting visual access points along the shore. Remember they used the word scenic. I go, you know, what scenic to me might not be to you, you know.
Right.
This is kind of a subjective question, I thought. And what I came up with is that the land trust has done a good job in preserving a lot of the land along the coast, particularly the islands. And that there's plenty of opportunity for pedestrians to see the coast in Cape Arundel and in Goose Rocks.
Right.
Anybody want to add to that or disagree with it?
No, you could add Rachel Carson pieces as well.
Yeah, good idea, Rachel.
It's a beautiful walk along the sidewalk there, all along Ocean Avenue.
It is indeed.
Talk to Kelly about it. And you know what? I imagine the Secret Service has already thought about this.
And this is just the rest of chapter 28. It tells what they call the minimum data required to address the analysis. And that I'm putting this up there to show you what they're asking for. It's pretty straightforward. Number 7, a list of scenic resources. That's where I was thinking this gets subjective.
Yeah.
What about access to the shore? Am I missing anything here? Other than what we just discussed, are there any? I know Goose Rocks is the site of some differences of opinion on public access. But are there any other hot spots along town that people have not been in agreement where you think, hey, you know, we really should try to get access over here if we could figure out how to do it?
You know, I think it's been something that's shown up in the comp, you know, and I think various iterations of the comp plan, you know, over the years where there's been kind of this sense of wanting to have some type of public boat access. But, you know, I think, you know, my sense is that the economics of it, you know, make it difficult. You know, not to mention just where would you put it?
Right.
You know, I mean, certainly the river is, you know, the river's built up, you know, and unless you're buying up a private marina, you know, like that's, you know, those are your boat launches. You know, there's not really a another practical location where you could do a municipal, you know, some type of municipal launch or something like that.
So if you're a boat owner in Kennebunkport and you want to launch, you go to a private marina. That's your.
You go to a private marina, or you can launch right next to that causeway out to Cape Corpus.
Okay.
Or you can, out at Goose Rocks, you can pay the Goose Rocks Beach Association $25 or $50, I forget what it is, and you can launch from, there is a launch there on the river, Little River.
Oh, okay, I didn't know about that.
And it's open to anybody, they don't discriminate. You can belong to the club and get it for free, or you can just pay to get a launch.
In policy, is the money set aside to maintain the launch? Is that the idea?
I guess so. I don't know where I think it just supports there's a neighborhood association, a nonprofit association that it supports, and they happen to own a piece of land where you can launch your boats at the right tide.
Okay.
Are we talking about smaller boats, kayaks, canoes, that type of thing?
Motorboats, anything.
Motorboats, too?
Sailboats. Yeah, not,
Yeah, not big books.
I don't know I don't know how deep it is, 4 feet,
Yeah,
at high tide,
yeah.
5 feet maybe.
Yeah,
I
it's not
know
very
that
deep.
at Cleves Cove, you can launch a boat down there. There's access. And also Turbot's Creek.
Hours looking for 'em, pitch dark.
Those two areas, you can pull up and launch
So you couldn't get there.
at the end of Turbot's Creek Road.
Okay, I'm hearing enough
And fish 'em out.
boat launch sites we probably should put on a map. That's basically what the state asked us to do in number 6.
Yeah,
Yeah, what's trick, so the state,
Yeah.
the state a number of years ago did, did an inventory of, public access points. So there should be some data out there. What's tricky is that, the communities, chose what they wanted to have shown on a public map.
Mm-hmm.
And so there were areas that were purposefully, even though there is technically public access, but the towns chose to not have those areas mapped, primarily because of a lack of parking areas, and the fact that a lot of these areas weren't necessarily, they're not necessarily, formally constructed areas. They may just happen to be an area where you could, if you're brave, you can stuff a boat through there. And so I think what practically speaking, what we tried to avoid, was that somebody, picked up a map and an app and said, oh, there's a boat launch here. And, you wind up with a circumstance where you've got, somebody trying to, stuff a 30-foot boat into an area that's really meant for, meant for kayaks or canoes.
Mm-hmm. I
So
agree with you completely, because there's one sign at Cleves Cove and there's nothing at Turbot's Creek, but people go down there all the time. And there are 2 ways to access the water, but it's not marked. And
Yeah.
there is no place to park.
What I'm doing now is that maybe the map's not such a good idea.
Yeah, I don't think,
Yeah,
we-
I mean,
yeah.
it's one of those things where, at the time, we just sort of left it to, we left it to what we called local knowledge, right?
Mhm.
yeah,
So, local knowledge, kind of keeps those areas usable, but it also keeps them from being overused.
Right.
I like that approach. Notice
I
number
do.
6, the way it's worded, it says a description or map. It says or. So we could throw in a paragraph describing things, without being too
yeah,
given
yeah.
Sure, yep.
given the tourists from New Hampshire,
Right.
the idea that they can launch a boat there,
Yeah, no street names, just,
We have many locations. Good luck finding them.
Ask the locals.
Yeah, the locals all know where they are, so we don't have to. And then these are this is pretty much boilerplate from 2A. These are the policies required to address the state goals. Of course, we saw the state goals early on there. And the minimum strategies the state is suggesting that we use to direct where this plan is going. And that's it. That's where we stand on chapter 208 now. Obviously, in the summer when we engage the public, we'll get a lot more ideas and proposals and recommendations and strategies thrown out there, and then we can contemplate those and see which way we want to go with those proposals.
okay.
That's pretty much what I have for you tonight on marine resources. I'm certainly open to conversation and anything else you want to throw in here or anything we may have missed.
This is Paul.
Yeah.
I think in terms of input, we need to think unconventionally in unconventional times. We are doing this differently than we would have could we be together. So I think it would be helpful for us to have a conversation at some point as to how else can we get public input to specific issues that we want to get public input on. do we do Survey Monkeys? Taking a couple of chapters and posing some questions and sending them out on the town, distribution list, and try to engage the public. We're obviously not getting any public input as we have these presentations. There perhaps are people watching on cable TV, but they don't know how to access us, and they haven't joined us on Zoom. So, this is not specific to this topic, it's a general question. And I'm afraid that if we just continue on and don't have a different kind of engagement, we won't have engagement. So I think it's a great challenge. And I know we're creative people, and I hope we, find a way to engage the public, other than relying entirely upon the summer when we know is a difficult time. And who knows what the health conditions will be, whether there will be public meetings or not. Mm-hmm. I don't think we can bet they're going to be. So, we did a Survey Monkey when we started this 2 years ago or a year and a half ago. It was not mailed out. It was just done electronically, and we got like 450 responses. It wasn't great, but it was better than not trying.
No, I like your idea, Paul. That's a point well taken. So I'll get with Liz and run that by her, see what she says. Because I know she's a big proponent of public engagement. In terms of the, a month ago when we talked about engaging the public, I was kind of cautiously optimistic that by the summertime, things would look a lot better.
Right.
And we'd be able to engage the public in outdoor settings, and the virus would be under control. Now, a month has passed, and we have 2 vaccines that have been announced. So I'm actually more optimistic now that we're going to have a really good chance of public engagement in warm weather, as long as we stay outdoors.
Yeah, it's just how those vaccines get, distributed across the country will be the key. And so what I've heard is mostly, end of second quarter, third quarter.
Right.
Right, is when most of the population will have at least had an opportunity. May choose not to, but will at least have the opportunity to get the vaccine.
Oh, that's why I want to stay outdoors, because of those people.
Yeah.
Who not to.
Absolutely.
Well, I've had very good luck.
but I think-
I've had very good luck with large Zooms. My company is, it's like 12,000 people, so they get together quite often too. But what you can do is you can hold 2 or 3 sessions on the same topic if you want, and still collect a lot of data, and do exactly what Paul's indicating, is just start getting some input, then have it available for people to watch so they can comment and join the next session, something like that.
How about the town's electronic capabilities? Can we get a Zoom session that can accommodate 30, 40 people?
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, no,
Our limit's something like 300.
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to say is our current strategy isn't at all working. We don't have any members of the public participating. So, and this goes out to everybody on the people who have signed up for the Growth Planning Committee mailing list. The town is not sending this out on a wider mailing list. And I hope there are people watching on cable TV, but we don't know that.
But
So
The number underneath
I-
is one of the C.
I kind of think we're doing this in a vacuum, and that's not good from a public policy point of. And so I'm suggesting that we think of alternatives than doing what we're just doing. I don't think we should stop, but I think that, maybe we send out 10 questions survey that gets sent to everyone in town who's on the big list, not our little list. And we ask some specific questions, perhaps, as a Survey Monkey questionnaire, and maybe that will engage some people.
So we tailor the questions, like for instance, tonight we just finished up marine resource review. Do we send out a questionnaire, maybe 3 to 4 questions on that
Right.
are related to that for feedback?
Right, that's my thought.
Yeah.
We've gone through a number of chapters, a couple of questions on each chapter that are targeted and focused, and we try to get more than the 7 of us interested in this.
All right, well, Liz and I would certainly be into, compiling questions and running them by you. In terms of engaging the larger public, we're going to, for SurveyMonkey, for example, to work, going to need email addresses for all your recipients.
Right, but the town big broad list has a lot of people. Our little committee list is probably very small, maybe 100 people. The town list is, multiple hundreds. Werner, do you have any idea?
No, I can find out, probably how many people are subscribed, to the broader, list. Yeah, I can see if I can find that number out for you. Yeah, and to your point, I do think, if you keep your survey questions to to a small number, I think that's some of the things that we've heard is that
Yeah, it has to be simple.
For surveys, right? They got to be simple. You got to keep the questions down. Yeah, like 5, 6 questions, or else folks will tend to not necessarily engage unless it's a topic that they're really passionate or interested in. And then there's just there's the need for somebody to take that and compile that data, and then present the results.
Okay, so
But-
we could actually do this multiple times then, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking if
Yeah.
you did, 2 or 3 chapters at a time by a survey, and then you'd at least have a basis to see how people are responding, to your questions. Not one each week or one each, I wouldn't do 2 a month. That's too much.
No, yeah. Maybe one every other month or every 3 months, huh?
Every 2 months, maybe.
Okay,
At least people would know the process is happening. They may be seeing emails and ignoring them, but at least they know the process is happening. So when the time comes to get endorsement and support, they know that we have been trying to reach out to the public.
okay. And Werner, the custodians of this list, are they the Board of Selectmen or?
It's run through the town website. I would say the custodian overall is going to be the town manager for that.
All right,
But I can discuss it with Lori and get a sense from her on using the broader list for these types of questions. I think if you're doing it, once every other month, I think that's probably fine. I think, you don't want to overload people so much, in terms of emails. But yeah, I think at that frequency, that probably shouldn't be an issue.
And there are other lists in town that there's a Kennebunkport Resident Association, and if we gave it to them once every 2 months, I think they would probably distribute it.
Yeah.
And there's a couple hundred people on a list out here at Goose Rocks. We could do that once every other month, the same list. There would be, some people subscribe to all of them, so it would be duplicates or triplicates, but at least we would be reaching, we would attempt to be reaching people who may not be paying attention.
Oh, that sounds good. Everybody else think that's a good idea?
Yeah, I think it's a
Yeah.
good idea.
I think it's a very good idea.
Here.
I'm
One
not
piece and all
sure,
that,
yeah.
it'd be good to know where they're coming from, though.
I think it's,
as well.
it's still too, it's just, I don't think you're engaging. I think you're just asking them to
But-
answer a couple of questions and
It's true.
you're
But
not
reality is, we
getting,
don't,
you're not getting any opinions.
No, but you can design your survey to get opinions at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can capture that and you can record. If you pay for a subscription, you can gather a lot of data and then you can build upon that. I mean, I see it as a way to engage, beginning to engage them for next summer, hoping that we can engage them next summer because we have, some community outdoor whatever activities. If we just hit them with it next summer and they haven't heard anything about it, that doesn't bode well. And if we try to,
Why don't we do something like this? Why don't we take your group out at the Goose Rocks? I know Dave James real well.
yeah,
And we'll ask them their opinions of how best to engage. Whether it should be through, a sampling of questions that they could answer or actually just get on, what we're doing today. So something like that. It's just like you and me just now discussing this. It's an opinion. There's different opinions and we don't want to lose those. Just because everybody answers in one way, they all agree. So
yeah.
I'm not sure I understand. I mean, I have the list of Goose Rocks, and unless I send something out to them and ask them to do something,
ask them what they would like to do, whether they would like to come together in a Zoom meeting and talk about some of these issues that are facing, maybe specifically more in that area, or marine resources and
right.
pollution and things like that, or if you want, would you be happier getting a questionnaire? Like maybe 10 questions and you answer the questions. Maybe throw an opinion in there.
Yeah, I'm just saying they haven't shown up from any part of town, so I think we need to do better. We can do better and we should do better. I don't know what.
But
I was asking about the capability of Zoom because in the time I've spent on these electronic meetings, you can fit like a dozen people on the screen. If there's more people in the audience, it gets kind of awkward,
Yeah,
Because our goal should be make it as interactive as possible, but the reality is I always see a moderator accepting questions via text or something and then passing them on. It's not exactly a back and forth.
Well, and I think that is one of the challenges. We've done a bunch of these now, as continuing education, and I think the reality of it is that it's just not the same as an in-person, meet where you're able to have an in-person interaction. There is something that's lost to it there, but at the same time, if you don't have some kind of moderation or management to it, it'll just become chaotic.
Yeah, have you had that experience in town, Werner?
No, I can imagine, the situation if you don't have somebody who's moderating it,
I've been present for a couple of those. The audience really got out of control.
We've had a couple of those.
but I participate in a lot of Zooms for a lot of different groups and organizations, and the consensus I'm seeing is that people have much more participation during Zoom because people don't have to travel 3 hours to a meeting or 2 hours to a meeting. They don't have to leave their kids at home at nighttime. They can just show up for an hour. They can participate, they can listen. They don't care what they're dressed in. They don't have to show themselves at a public meeting. Maybe they don't want to say a thing, but they want to participate. But we're not getting any of that.
Right. How do we get the word out? Say we decide that we want to, I think we're all agreed the Survey Monkey is a great idea. And we're entertaining the idea of doing Zoom. How do we build an audience for the Zoom session?
I think that's what Jim was getting at, is to talk to Dave and talk to those in Goose Rocks, talk to others and see how they want to be interacted with.
Not
I
only
don't
that,
know.
but it gives us an opportunity, even on the website, to say, we're at a point where we'd love to all get together in a live session. We know we can't do that.
Right.
So we would love to have maybe the first 30 people or first 20 people that really have a need to understand what is going into the comprehensive plan to plan and come to a Zoom meeting just to talk about the different issues. Here's a couple of different issues that we would be discussing.
So shall we tentatively plan to have a Zoom session in midwinter?
And I would try them both.
Yeah, I'm talking both too. I'm trying to find everything that we have in our toolbox. I like the Survey Monkey. I like the Zoom. My best preference is to wait till the virus dies down in the summer and you can stand out there in the field.
But he says he's allergic to it, too.
Well, you could do, sometime in the winter, a Zoom session that followed a Survey Monkey.
Right.
And so you'd have this public input to the extent you get it. And then you could have a meeting that followed it, a Zoom session that was well promoted, not just one of our ordinary meetings that we're not getting anybody to come to. And the topic could be whatever. And, marine resources or our lobster industry or our natural resources or, something that we've covered in our chapters so far, and that we try to, use a combination of any input we can get from a Survey Monkey and, bring it into a Zoom and then have a Zoom discussion. It's pretty dark and long in January and February. People don't have much to do. So it's kind of a good time to engage the locals. And the nice thing about Zoom is it can go to anyone, no matter where you are. Not just if you're sitting here in Kennebunkport, if you're in Massachusetts or wherever.
Yeah. I like that, Paul. What do you guys think if we tentatively plan to do the first of several Survey Monkeys in January and a Zoom session in February?
Let's go ahead and target that.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, get past the holidays.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe in March we'll come back with another Survey Monkey.
Yeah, cover a couple of other chapters, some key points.
Yeah, if we can be provocative and ensure a big turnout,
Not only that, but if we were starting to wrestle with something, it's a good time to put it out there.
Exactly. I mean, there are some issues we know or not everybody's going to agree on.
Yeah.
That's usually when you get the most people.
We'll just want to make sure we give some thought in terms of how it gets moderated, so that it doesn't turn, chaotic in the sense of, folks not quite understanding how the etiquette, is supposed to work. But yeah, so we'll just want to give some thought just to, kind of structure and how, who's on first, who's moderating what, and how that's going to work. But
Do we have anybody in town that has experience moderating one of these large Zoom meetings?
That should be our biggest problem, that it'd be a large Zoom meeting.
Right.
Yeah, well-
And I think, like everybody's probably experienced at this point, a lot of these, larger meetings, the vast majority of people are, really, sit in that audience category, right? They don't sit as, they don't sit as panelists like we're sitting right now, where everybody can see everybody. You have this distinct separation between your two groups.
You do it as a webinar.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's basically, you're going to have it hosted as a webinar,
Oh,
Yeah, I've had some, I've gone to some that at the community college, and they have huge numbers. But I bet they have somebody, I think they have somebody that does all the moderation. Maybe I could ask them whether or not they could teach us one of us anyway, how to moderate a big meeting like that.
That's a good idea, Jim.
Good idea.
Even better if you could persuade him to join us that evening.
To live in town.
So,
But this is
I'll follow
not this is not just a Zoom issue though, right? I mean, I've been on this committee since 2005, and there's always been not a lot of folks at meetings,
Right.
unless you bring a topic up that brings some interest. And usually those were far and few between. Certainly like the rumor ordinance that we provided had the biggest turnout in the nearly 15 years that I've been on this committee. Right? And so what was that, 20 people maybe?
Yeah.
So,
You
we
forget the
had-
charrette, Dan.
huh?
You forget the charrette.
Yeah, well, it was the charrettes for sure, but that was a different thing.
Yep.
That was different. But for these type of meetings, it's always been a challenge. And at least when we did it in 2005, which I didn't want to do it that way, when we did it chapter by chapter, there was, you sort of get that immediate feedback at each town vote, which I don't think is the way we need to do it this time, because we want to bring it all together. But I think the Survey Monkeys will probably give us the most results. I think a Zoom meeting, if we had 30 people, that'd be wonderful to bring in. The only thing I always get concerned there is, are we getting a good audience, a good distribution of the different people in the town from living in different areas, and then the diversity and so forth, and not have it get lopsided where, those that showed up pushed it in a way that the rest of the town may not like, which we then could run into issues when we get to go for a town vote. So.
Survey Monkey works the same way though.
Yeah.
What about Facebook? Are there any Facebook sites that are well attended in town? I'm thinking in terms of getting the word out.
Yeah. Good question. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the town certainly has its own, Facebook presence, that I think
The chamber is good.
I think works. The town site works well just for kind of one-off, distribution of information about, say, like a singular event or something like that. It's not really for discussion, back and forth.
Right.
Right. It's not for engagement, but
Yeah.
it's more for kind of a, hey, guess what? Did you know that the town is working on an update to its comprehensive plan? I mean, I think that's probably a good survey question right there, just to see how many folks are even aware that this process is going on, or how many have just kind of forgotten it, because COVID has taken over their world at the moment. So.
Yeah, no, I asked about Facebook simply as just a way to alert people that we're going to have a Zoom meeting. That's all.
Well, as we said, there are a bunch of groups around, like the Kennebunkport Residents Association, the Goose Rocks Association there, and maybe a couple others. You never know. So, the Kennebunkport Business Association. They're all have little associations with lots of people.
Conservation Trust.
Yeah, they got a big mailing list.
Yeah, we've not been utilizing them.
That was one of the pieces that we did use more often, Paul, and that's a good point, is as we got into different sections, we would tend to invite at least targeted audiences to them.
Irrelevant, yeah.
Yeah, to the topic.
All right, well, I think you guys got some good ideas for stepping up the game for public engagement. I have a tentative plan here.
Okay.
Maybe we just, Dan, need to send out, you know, an email from you every 2 weeks to, you know, 5 or 6 or 7 groups saying, you know, with the link to the agenda, saying, you know, please share with your peeps.
Okay. I did that, Paul, back in, when we brought Cameron Waite in the fall.
Right. Yeah, and we had good.
Yeah.
The turnout.
Yeah, one of the groups, they blocked me. They thought I was some kind of commercial enterprise. So I'll have to go chase that one back and explain it to them.
Maybe, maybe we should just look at a list of every chapter going forward and think of the groups that might be most interested. And then make sure we invite them
Mm-hmm.
to, you know, share it with their people.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of chapters going forward, we'll have another chapter for you a week from tonight.
2 weeks.
2 weeks, the 15th,
Right, we'll have a draft out for you, so you
to
have
read, right.
Yeah,
Right.
What's that topic? I forget.
Well, that's what I was just going to say is we were tentatively looking at transportation, but it may be economy. It would be one or the other, and the reason is Liz giving birth is a big event, and she's never been there before, so she's kind of feeling her way. So we're gonna we'll see how that goes, but we'll definitely have one or the other for you a week from tonight.
Great, thanks.
Thanks.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So thank you, Tom.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, John.
Right. This is our, so that should wrap up everything. Is there any other business we need to handle? We're past our 2-hour allotment, but
We're past our bedtime.
past our bedtime. Okay, so other than that, then I will listen for a motion. Do
I
hear one,
motion we
Mr.?
adjourn.
All right. Do I hear a second?
Hogan seconds.
All right. All in favor?
Hi.
Bye.
Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay,
All right,
thank you.
Take care. Yep.
Take care now.